Good evening. Welcome to Black Voices Man to Man. This is part of a 3 nights session where you hear from a host of Black voices, men, women, youth, and young adults to share hopes, aspirations, challenges, insights on the Black experience. Tonight, we'll be focusing on the men. And we have three distinguished panelists tonight. Oh, by the way, I'm Marino Bruce. I'm at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. I am director of the program for research on faith, health, and justice there. And I wanted to introduce three esteemed gentlemen this evening who will be joining me for what we hope to be a vibrant discussion on issues that affecting Black men and the Black community. First, we have Reverend and Representative Otis Anthony from the Mississippi House of Representatives. He's a native of Sunflower County in Indianola. He's a graduate of Tougaloo College, as well as the Agape Bible College in West Memphis, Arkansas, where he's also currently pursuing a master's degree in theology. The righteous Reverend and Representative Anthony believes in civic responsibility and social engagement, and that we all should have service at the core of our foundation. Currently, he's the new elected Mississippi State Representative from District 31, which encompasses Sunflower, Humphreys, Bolivar, and Washington counties. Thank you for being here with us, Reverend Anthony.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce, for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Our second panelist is Mr. John Knight. He's born and raised in the great city of Jackson, Mississippi. He's a dedicated member of Strong Arms of Jackson, which is a violence interruption initiative program in the city. He's also a member of the People's Advocacy Institute, the Poor People's Campaign, and the Mississippi Prison Reform Coalition, as well as being a dedicated advocate for HIV and AIDS. He states that he was once part of the problem, but he's very dedicated to changing the narrative and being part of the solution to economic and social change. Mr. Knight, welcome to Black Voices.
I'm so happy to be a part of this.
Oh, great. And finally, we have Mr. Albert Sykes. He's the executive director of the Institute for Democratic Education in America, commonly known as IDEA. He's a native son of Mississippi, and he's been an IDEA organizer and fellow for the past 3 years. He works on both the local and national level around critical issues such as education reform, zero tolerance policies, and the school to prison pipeline. He advocates for policies such as quality education as a constitutional right, and works in conjunction with many organizations, which includes the NAACP Mississippi State chapter, where he serves on a statewide education committee. Through all of his experiences, Mr. Sykes has gained much firsthand knowledge and understanding of Black Mississippi's struggle for justice, equity, and full citizenship. He's also the proud father of 3 sons. Welcome to Black Voices, Mr. Sykes.
Thank you. I actually have 4 sons now. I don't want to get beat up.
Okay. Yes, we always want to make sure we represent correctly. So, thank you to the 3 of you for joining us on a Wednesday evening. We know this is a busy time, and we want to jump right into the discussion. And I have a few questions that I want to ask, and again, I want all of you to respond to them. We want to have a conversation about health, wealth, opportunity, and challenges, privileges, and purpose. That's a big statement. So, as a Black man in Mississippi, these things are tied to race and equity. My question, and we're going to start out with a deep one this evening: what is it like to be in your skin in 2020? So we'll start with Mr. Sykes. Tell us, what is it like to be a Black man in Mississippi in 2020?
It's a unique place to be in. It has much beauty and joy, and it also has a lot of struggle and oppression tied to it. Some of it exists right now in 2020, but it is something that was manifested many, many years ago and that's been practiced for many years. over the history of our state. And so I'm the father of 4 black sons, and statistics tell me that one of my children should belong to the state at some point, either as a ward of
Mm.
the state when they're a child, or as a captured person by the state if they happen to go and be incarcerated. And so my life every day is working against the data that predicts all the worst for my children, and trying to put my own sons and young folks their age in a position where they live against what's been predicted and prescribed for them, and that they actually are able to live out who God created them as, and that they're able to share their gifts with the world in their most pure form. So I'm working to be a non-diluted black man, raising non-diluted black boys, and being able to show my children what it's like to wake up and be proud, regardless of what this country says about your skin. It holds a lot of rich history, wisdom, sacrifice, and victory. And so I want to just say that in 2020, it's a unique position to be a black man in Mississippi. It has
Mm.
both its ups and downs, and I think we got what it takes to make Mississippi be what it should be for black men. So you don't
All
have to
right.
ask this question.
All right. Great. A great opening start. Mr. Knight, what do you want to add to the discussion? What is it like to be you in Mississippi in 2020?
Uh, to be honest, it's to me it's more as a gift and a curse to be a
Mm.
black man in the state of Mississippi. And the reason I say that is I'm gonna go this way. It's a gift because we are kings from birth. We are kings since the day our skins became brown and black in this world, period. And I say it's a curse because they are afraid of us.
Mm.
We are the most feared race of people in this world, from my knowledge of 43 years of living. And when I say that, that means black people, to me, we are the chosen people, period. We are the most educated. We are the most talented. We are the most outspoken. And we are the most dominant people that I have seen and I have come in contact with. And I'm very, very proud and boisterous and just joyous to be a black man, period. Whether it's in Mississippi, Philadelphia, Washington, or anywhere in this world. This is the most challenging and most oppressed and the most jubilant thing to be a black man and to raise black boys in this
That's right.
city or in this state or in this country is the most challenging thing it is, because you have to teach them the ins and outs, the goods and the bads. You can't hide things from your kids. You have to let them know that this world will eat them up if they're not educated. Educated black man is the most feared person there is that I could think of, that I know of. And I'm one of them. And I've educated myself throughout the years of being free and also a formerly incarcerated brother. So I know both sides of the good and bad of being a black man in the state of Mississippi. And Mississippi has always been a red state. But with the black and brown skin that I represent, that we raise, that we love, that we deal with, that we dwell in, we could change the narrative and the mindset of the whole state of Mississippi and beyond it. So I'm proud to be black.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So we're going to hear from our final panelist on that same question. And this is Reverend Anthony. What do you want to add to the discussion? I think you have a unique, you sit at a unique nexus, being uh, passive in the church as well as sitting in the Mississippi House of Representatives.
Most definitely, Dr. Bruce. And again, thank you for having me. And I was just blessed beyond what I understood at the time when I grew up. I grew up in a household where excellence and high standards were displayed. They were also expected. I expected to do well. I expected to do my chores. I was expected to give 100% every day. I didn't always get to that bar, but I was expected to do that. I also grew up with an amazing support system that spoke life into me and told me that I was somebody from the very beginning, that I could be great, that I could accomplish whatever it is I set my mind to. I believe that then, and I believe it now. But along the way, I've also seen firsthand some of the things that my other brothers were talking about. I've seen some of the systems and policy in place that disproportionately affect people of color, especially black men. I'm keenly aware that I'm still judged based on how I dress, how I speak, how I look. That's reality. That's reality 101. I'm also keenly aware, Dr. Bruce, that I have to give 100% every day in every endeavor and still be discounted sometimes because of someone else's inferiority complex of who I am or their ignorance. And so early on, I had that confidence in my own ability because of my parents and my support system that made me believe that I was a child of theirs, number one, and also a child of God. And my grandmama told me that God don't make no jump. So I'm still with that ability to believe in myself. I'm still cautious when I go in certain stores, and I make sure I have my hands in plain sight as a grown black man. When I drive through certain neighborhoods today, certain towns, especially at night, even with those credentials on the back of my car on my tag, I'm still a little uptight, hoping that I'm not stopped and questioned. And so, yes, I'm still a little nervous as a black man. I'm cautious, but I'm always confident, but still
Mm.
cautious. And so, regardless of the education that you have, regardless of what side of the tracks you live on, we as black men, we still have those who have those inferiority complexes and that ignorance still are threatened by us, and we have to, arm ourselves, and even today. And so I'm confident, but I'm also cautious.
Thank you, three, for providing a very rich and deep responses to that question. And I want to take a moment to ask the audience to, if you're watching this, please respond and share uh, th- this uh, this discussion with your friends and with your family, because the narrative that we see with respect to Black men is not what you just heard just a few minutes ago from all three of the distinguished panelists this evening. As you could hear, certain words in terms of being confident, but being cautious, understanding that um, the skin that we are born in can be um, seen as a blessing and a curse. But also, but what's most importantly that I heard from our distinguished panel is that we're positive and we recognize that we contribute. We've contributed to this country from the time that we've been here. We continue to contribute today, and we're well aware of that. So, despite what you may hear and see, we have panelists today that are um, countering the narrative that's out there. So I want to pause and acknowledge um, their humanity and their contribution to society. And so thank you for being candid and thank you for being open about being Black in Mississippi and in America in 2020. So it's interesting that all of you touched upon the idea of caution and how others may fear us. I'm sure all of you are aware of names such as George Armand, um, Trevon, Eric, Philando, Steele, and countless others who have been killed at the hands of police. Given where we are as a nation, given how hot these topics are in terms of police brutality, police killing, and our just basic interactions with law enforcement. What do you think is our best step forward? How do we move forward in 2020, 2021, and beyond? And so I'm going to flip the order. I'd like each of you to respond to that question. And we're going to start with Representative Anthony. How do we move forward given what's going on today, how hot it still is, how tense it is, even when we talk about policing, in particular policing in African American communities, but in particular the interactions between police and Black men? How do we move forward? What do we need to do?
Well, I think first of all, you got to call the problem out.
Mm.
You have to shine a light on it. It has been demonstrated across the last several weeks and months. Challenging these racial injustices and racism starts with calling it out. You cannot be silent about it. You can never change a problem you won't confront. And so when we shine a light to it, shine a light to that issue, uh, oftentimes offenders don't know that they are offending. They're not aware of
Mhm.
it. But you have to be the one to say, look, this is not right. You got to shine a light. You got to confront that issue. We cannot be quiet. You got to call it out. Um, um, and with that, we got to go vote. Number two, we got to vote. We got to vote down ticket. Oftentimes, in especially during the federal elections that we're experiencing now, that we're in now, we just want to focus upon the president. We want to focus on top tickets, but you got to elect some district attorneys. You got to vote down ticket. You got to vote in these local races. You got to elect some county prosecutors that have our best interests at heart. You got to look at some county judges and circuit judges, and you cannot just wait and vote in presidential elections, but you got to vote down ticket. And then thirdly, very quickly, you got to give and hold these companies that we give our dollars to accountable. See, money circulates, and we know the statistics. Money circulates in the black community 0 to 1 time, okay, compared to more than 6 times in the Latino community, 9 times in the Asian community, and unlimited amount of times in other communities, according to statistics. And so we as black consumers, we got to broker those seats at the table because we spend $1.2 trillion annually. And so these companies cannot afford not to listen to us because our money is there. And so when we tackle that, because most things begin with economics, if you can tackle the economics of the issue, they'll listen. They may not listen to you, but they listen to your money. And number four, you, you have to reform. We gotta really take a hard look at reforming policing and their
Mm.
training. Lawmakers around the country after George Floyd's death and murder on television, um, they took a hard look at police reform from a state level, from a policy level. But policing starts at the local level also. So we got to look at and take a serious look at reviewing the standards and procedures of these police departments. I think we ought to definitely take a hard look at these no-knock warrants that should be
Mm.
eliminated. You got to look at repealing these laws that shield police disciplinary records from public scrutiny. You got to ban chokeholds. We got to build databases upon traffic stops. See, we got to look at those numbers. Look at who's being stopped, why they are being stopped, and what communities they are being stopped in.
Mm.
And then we also got to look at establishing maybe some sort of independent agency to investigate police misconduct. I'm not talking about defunding the police because we need them, but these are some hard looks that we really need to look at reforming and giving accountability, not just on the citizen side, but also on the police side as well.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Most
Sykes.
definitely.
Mr. Sykes, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. For one, I think it happens at a much smaller level, and it's a more interpersonal thing than we think when we talking about change, whether it's changing the police and changing policies, changing this country. Um, I always like to remind people of the fact that Donald Trump has 63 million votes, which means that at least publicly it was 63 million people willing to say that they co-sign and stamp the messages that come from him. So the work is not that you're gonna change all 63 million of those people at one time, but how many people outside of those 63 million are willing to engage in one-on-ones with that 63 million? I think a lot of times we see change as this thing that we saw in pictures of the civil rights movement, right? And we see in the documentaries of the civil rights movement these big mass marches But unless we're getting in the books and unless we're getting in our communities, unless we having discussions with our grandparents, then we don't know one-on-one work of Miss Williams who cooked chicken to make sure that when the mass meeting was over, people could come in and eat. Or folks like Bayard Rustin, who did so much work, right, and who was shunned to the sidelines of the civil rights movement because of his sexuality, but like who was building those one-on-one relationships that it took to make something like the March on Washington happen. And then when the Reverend talked about rethinking policing, part of we got to think about, do we really understand not just the origin of policing, but how early of an introduction that is in our kids' life? Um,
Mm,
the narrative of policing and the practice of policing. So when I talk about the narrative policing, when you're a child and you play cops and robbers, most time if you the cop, your objective is to shoot the robber. It's never we're gonna
mm,
arrest them. It's straight up like we're gonna shoot the robber. So what? How does that message get in our young people's heads at such an early age? And then I think about Harry Belafonte starting the Gathering for Justice because a 5-year-old girl in Florida got arrested at her school, let out kicking and screaming in handcuffs, with a police officer who didn't have much compassion for how old she was, and the fact that at 5 or 6 years old, a kindergarten student can already be adultified, looked at
mm,
as a person who should be treated and punished, if that's the word, who should be treated in the same fashion as we treat adults who commit offenses. And part of the reasons that we treat adults who commit offenses the way that we do is because we didn't put the investment in the working in them when they were young people. Um, so it's not just policing in the streets, but we also working on issues around police free schools, where
Right.
the school is a direct place where our kids begin the practice of learning what it's like to be incarcerated. Whereas where you have police in the schools in New York City, it's easier to go get on a flight at any airport in the country than it is to enter a high school.
Mhm.
We understand what safety means, but safety also comes from culture. So we will have safe people when we have safe cultures. Policing is not safe culture. Policing does not derive from a safe culture. Policing was never something that was invented for the safety of people. It was for the control of people. It was for the fear. It was for instilling a certain amount of fear in people about being held captive. But it doesn't have the rehabilitative things that it needs, and it's just a replica or an extension of what's already been decided for our kids when they've been in public education or when they've been in private education, and they've been sifted and sorted, and kind of education has been the thing that's just kind of pushed them off and relegated them to whatever sector of life that we think they should live in based on what a test says they know or don't know. So it's a lot to do around changing policing, and that also starts with changing people. And so that's why I say we can't look at it as a mass thing, because the reverend on the phone, he'll tell you you can go hang around a big group of great Christians, but that won't get you into heaven if you're not doing
Right.
the individual work that it needs for
Exactly.
you to get on in the door.
Say
So
that. Say it
That's
again,
right.
brother.
All right. Well, we
I like that.
well, y'all are just dropping some knowledge. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Knight, let's bring it home. So tell me, how can we move forward in this time of where tension is high? I don't know how much we're discussing. We know that the tension is high, but what do we need to move forward in this whole thing about policing, and particular policing in black men?
Well, first of all, from if you ask me, we can't move forward. And the reason why I said we can't move forward because we haven't really handled the situation. Now we haven't really brung out what we need to bring out. Like the brother was just saying, policing was never made to make people safe. It was made to control us. And as you guys that are older than me and this other brother on here know, the Klan used to be the police back in the days. You know,
Used to.
so when hold on, just hear me out. They was the police that they sent out to rustle up Negroes, to get Negroes to do what they wanted them to do. So, as I said earlier, the United States of America was built on the back of slavery, control, violence. You understand me? So when it trickled down from the Klan having their badge on in the daytime to putting on their white sheets at the nighttime to go out to rustle up Negroes, to lynch them, to beat them, to threaten them, to tell them I'm gonna kill your wife or your child if you don't do what I tell you to do. So
Mm-hmm.
that mindset has went on from generation to generation to generation, whether you was a black cop or a white cop. That same mindset, because they have the blue lives, the brotherhood, they have their brotherhood too. So you're a small portion of a police department, no matter where you at, as being black. When I say small portion, you can have the majority as your physical body, but your theme and your beliefs and what you want to do is only a small portion because this has only been passed down. So you have to follow this order of law that has been passed down from oppressors from years and years ago that is still going on. Because if you look in the black communities, it's 90% black police patrolling them. 90% black police beating the young black men for not putting their hands on the hot car, laying their face on the hot concrete. You know, I'm a father from a son that was brutally beaten by a Jackson police officer for
Mm-hmm.
no reason, for no reason ever. You know, no reason. He just was out of line, just picked my son out and followed him, ripped him out the car, handcuffed him, beat him, put the gun to his head, drug him, and took the cuffs off him and told him he can go. Didn't run his name, didn't run a tag on the car,
Mm-hmm.
didn't do anything, towed the car up and everything. So I know firsthand that you don't have to be doing anything out of order to be tortured and beaten and brutalized by officers of the law per se. And on
Mm-hmm.
their cards say to protect and serve. So the trust issue for me and my
Mm-hmm.
family and so many other countless families throughout America is gone. That's why I said from the door, we can't move forward because we haven't really found out what the real problem is. Why does it constantly happen? Why is America accepting this? Why is America letting this go on? You know why? Because they don't care. It's not their children. It's not little Tommy and little Bobby. It's little Ray Ray and little JoJo from around the corner, from over there off across the tracks. So they should get what they should get. That's how they think about us. That's why I said earlier, it's a curse and it's a blessing to be a brown and black man in not just Mississippi, but America, period. So until we, as a nation of people, understand that the laws, not just of the land, or the police departments, or the correctional system, but the laws of the Constitution of America was never written to protect or serve any black or brown person in this world, if you ask me. From what I know from reading the Constitution of America, I don't see anything in there that say, don't do this to black people, don't do that to brown people, don't do this or don't do that. Everything, because I don't think I went back in those days, but from from my learning and my teaching, I didn't see I didn't see John Knight signing his John Hancock on anything. You know what I'm saying? So until until America understands that the Constitution of America is going to be upheld constantly, repeatedly, wrong or right, we're going to have to try to get amendments made to that Constitution. And I preach this a lot within my organization and people when I talk to them. We can scream all day, we can riot all day, we can rally all day, we can pray all day and all night. But until we reach the bottom line, the root of all these situations that have taken place that are going to be more in the future, because if that don't change, nothing's going to change. You know, and I hate to say this, but Trump has brought all the racist people out in America that were hiding behind curtains, or hiding behind the counter, or hiding behind his suit and tie, or hiding behind the glass window. He gave them courage and gave them balls to come out loud and blatantly say the things that they've been wanting to say for years. So it's more than us just getting past or moving forward. We're going to have to handle what's behind us, because the thing that's behind us is what's tugging us and pulling us and keeping
Mm.
us in that same situation. Until we get that monkey off our backs, we can't move forward, if you ask me.
Well, I want to say, and I want to again encourage the audience to like, to share, to comment on the knowledge that you've been hearing this evening, not only in terms of a contemporary sense or current sense today, but also how it links back to our history in this country. I would say, as Mr. Knight was saying, that the Constitution was not written with us in mind. That is an absolute fact. As a matter of fact, at the time of the writing of the Constitution, we were considered property. So, for a simple fact that um, you don't write, so you don't put your desk or your chair into a contract unless you plan on purchasing that contract. But for the most part, we were considered property. So the Constitution, in terms of our consideration or being considered as citizens, that came much later. So when people are talking about these issues of structural racism or institutional racism, those are the things that our panelists are talking about. Not only the interaction of the 101, but also the policies and the procedures and the practices that people have done generation after generation. Again, our panelists talked about how law enforcement back in the not too distant future were both part of what we classify today as domestic terrorists, but also public servants at the same time. So when you occupy
Mm.
those two positions, you can imagine the distrust and mistrust of communities like African Americans when we see that sign on the back of cars: protect and serve whom or
That's the
where.
question.
Those are the questions that we have. So again, we want to thank the panelists for their candor, their awareness, and their willingness to share all of this knowledge with us this evening. I have a couple more questions. We're at our halfway point. I want to acknowledge our sponsors, One Voice and the Mississippi NAACP. We also want to thank the young men of Delta Proud Fellows at Delta State University to being host for this segment of Black Voices Speak Man to Man. We want to thank those institutions. We want to thank those programs. We want to thank the individuals who are part of that for this blessed conversation this evening. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and this was touched on actually by Representative Anthony when he talked about in terms of the dollars bouncing around certain communities, and it seems to bounce out of ours. However, um, since our panelists are sons of the state, I'm pretty sure they know the story of Bayou, which in the
Yes.
1880s it was a city founded by former slaves, and it thrived economically, and its people prospered. So the history of Black wealth in Mississippi, there's actually a history of it. There's a story of it. So how can we build Black wealth in Mississippi in 2020 and beyond? So I'm gonna
Oh,
start with so I gave Reverend Anthony a chance to kick us off, Mr. Sykes a chance to kick us off, Mr. Knight. I want you to kick us off with this question: how can we build Black wealth in Mississippi?
huh.
That's a heck of a question, my brother. That's a heck of a question, my brother. Uh it's that's very, very trying. And the reason I say that is because just you I'm just gonna be real and honest. Our black brothers and sisters, we are nowhere near as strong and outgoing as those black brothers and sisters was, mothers and fathers was back in those days.
Mm,
They had the soul and the heart of lions. in the dungeon, in the oven, and they found a way to come out of it. It was about survival. And our people nowadays, they're not as much as about survival. They're more about knocking each other down to get ahead to have some on the other one
Mhm.
instead of
Right.
helping us. See, since the 1800s, the 1700s, the 1600s, has been black people in America, in this world, every century it got stronger. But once it seemed like after them 1800s, when it hit the 1900s, after the civil rights era, when all our black leaders, when they stood up, when they was murdered in front of the multitude, everybody got scared. All the all the balls that the black brothers had at the time, they hide behind the women, pushing the women out there, because those was really the matriarchs. Those were really the ones that was making the men be the men that they were in those days, because those who they were confined in. At night when they was writing, they was typing, and they was listening and phone calling. That woman was in their ear telling them, "Go ahead, Malcolm. Go ahead, Martha. Martin, speak up. Don't be afraid now. You have to stand up now, or nobody will stand up." So we have to find some way, somehow, deep down inside of us as a nation of people to learn to love each other. See, the love been lost. The compassion is gone. And we envy each other so much that it's a doggone shame. Once we get out of those envious ways of being jealous and have deceit and lawson in your heart because this person has that, instead of saying, "Man, I can't stand him because he got that." Why you can't say, "I want to know how this brother or this sister obtained this type of wealth and
Right.
sustained this job and became from a panhandler at this job to an owner or shares within his corporation." So we have to teach each other and educate each other again, like we once did, like the brothers and the sisters back in the days who wasn't allowed to be able to read, snuck around to teach other brothers and other sisters how to read different scriptures in the Bible besides the ones that King James wanted you to just stay slave and submissive to your master. Once they
Hmm.
found out how to read around those and see that we are
Right.
all created equal under the eyes of God, they gave them the strength of lions, tigers, and bears all over. Not just one lion. Everybody felt as there was a lion because they all see that I am the same as this person, no matter what gender, no matter what sex, no matter what neighborhood or what economical scale you're on. We're all created equal and we all should have
Hmm.
the same opportunities. So as black people, we can build another Tulsa. We can
Mhm.
rebuild a Mount Bayou. But are we willing to do it? Are we up for the sacrifices that it's going to take? Are we up for the losses that we're going to take? See, this generation of people, they don't want a loss. They
Hmm.
want everything from the dough. They want to just wake
Right.
up tomorrow and be rich. They don't have to, they
Mhm.
don't want to have to work for it. They don't want to have to sacrifice and save for it and not buy this and not spend that and put this over here and don't touch this, act like I don't have this so I can have a future. See, we have to
Right.
teach them how to save. See, a lot of people don't know how to save and how to sacrifice because they don't want to sacrifice. They don't want to save. They want it now. They don't want it later because the way the world have us thinking, and when I say us, I speak of all people because I am one of those people. At times, I have my times when I like, man, I ain't got time to wait. But then my wife, like I just told you, then women, she'll come back and say, if you don't wait, then you ain't gonna have nothing later on, John. And I said, you're exactly right, Tasha. So we gotta have somebody in our ear besides another person that's thinking the same negativity. See, so much negativity that goes in our ears and don't go out. You know how people say go on the ear and out? The negativity stops right in the middle and they just focus on it. But the positive that you try to give them, that's what go in and out. Like, man, I don't want to hear that. I need this right now. Okay, you get this right now. And then later on down the line, when you need it, when your child need it, when your children need it, or when your neighbor need it, you don't feel it's your job to help them. So we got to get
Hmm.
our people back to understanding that we are our brothers and sisters keepers. Nobody else is going to love us if we don't love ourselves. So it all rounds back to love, respect, and understanding and education for us to be another rich black nation, if you ask me.
Uh, All right. I like that. It's Wednesday night. There's Bible study night in a lot of places. So we thank you. You thank you for the references. Uh, Mr. Sykes, what do you want to add to that? How can we build Black wealth in Mississippi?
One, I think we look around at what the pandemic has shown us, and we harness that at much higher levels. You see people that's making custom face masks. You got people that's making um, food out of their homes. You got people who doing so many creative things. And I've been watching on Facebook, just looking at the amount of young black, some college educated, some non-college educated folks who getting their business licenses with the state and like really going about the legit ways of
Right.
setting up. And so all we gotta do is keep the focus on, after this pandemic, can we still understand that we need each other the same way? Like this is
Mm.
something that has allowed us to do things out of necessity of the time. But I think when the pandemic is gone, the necessity of the time remains the same. Um, so when you look around Jackson, specifically, the most successful club owners, the most successful restaurants aren't the ones that always promote themselves, but they the ones that don't have shame in promoting other people. So
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
you have like Sugar's restaurant downtown in Jackson. You will always see Miss Glenda, the owner, eating at somebody else's restaurant, taking pictures of it and saying how good it is. Then you got young brothers like Lee Vance that'll go and shop with other restaurants on purpose just to show like I support you. And not just that I support you, but I know what you're going through. And I know that your success depends on me being able to contribute to it. You got so many people who do that. And we just gotta be more intentional about not being afraid of who's gonna win. Like if we focus on strategies that say we all got something to bring and we all got something that we can gain, then it's not about who wins and who loses. It's a collective understanding that we all coming in this so we can all come out better. And so then when we talk about black wealth, we talking about it from an equitable place where it's not that rich black people get the same thing that poor black people have across the board, but is it do poor black people get what they need? And do rich black people have what they need? So I think that the change of wealth has to be a collective effort, and that is not as far away from us as we think it is. But it can't come out of necessity of a pandemic. It has to come out of the necessity of our lives and the future of our communities and the future of our kids, our hospitals. Everything depends on whether or not we can collectively move an agenda together. And part of that is going back to what you talked about earlier around the Constitution, is being in the know of the fact that we still making this transition from constitutional property to constitutional people. So our wealth will
Mhm.
follow us. When we were constitutional property, wealth automatically went to the state of Mississippi. It went to the United States government. It helped create King Cotton. But when we become constitutional people, then the wealth has to follow us the same as it followed everybody else who had every right that was assigned to them under that constitution that we've always historically been denied.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Oh
you.
yes. Oh
Reverend
yes.
Anthony, I need you to close this out. You keyed it up. You
All
teed it
right.
up. So go ahead and close out this question.
Yeah, these listen. I definitely agree with Brother Knight and Brother Sykes. Number one, we got to start talking about money. We got to talk about it in the black community. We often um, don't talk about money, making money, or saving money. I live about 40 miles south of Mount Bayou, and we learned about Isaiah Montgomery in elementary school. And more so when I got to Tougaloo College, we learned more so about Isaiah and how here it is, uh, former slaves who didn't have what we have now built this community and built black wealth. And so we can't shy away from discussing financial planning with our loved ones. We got to go beyond talking about paying off our credit cards and saving each month. We got to have a plan, because if we don't have a plan, we will never obtain long term wealth. We got to accumulate wealth by saving and creating long term strategies. One of the things I see, especially in our community, most of us if we have life insurance, we have very little.
Mhm.
And so when your loved one passes, when Big Mama passes, you pass down more debt than you do savings because she doesn't have very much insurance. So that's the quickest way to create generational wealth is you got to have a plan to, if in the event that breadwinner passes, if in the event daddy passes, the children still got to go to school. They need more money just to bury them. They got to go to school. They got to get they have to live beyond and replace that income. See, we were taught in school to go to school, get a good education, get a good job. Well, that day of retiring after 30 years and getting a gold watch and a turkey, that day is over with. Okay? We got to do something different. We got to learn. I'm glad to hear my brother said we got to learn to live within our means. We got to start where we are. We can't keep beating ourselves up for what we didn't do, but we got to start where we are. And you got to have a plan. You got to have a written goal because out of sight is out of mind. If it's something that you're not looking at on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, you're not tracking your expenses and looking at what you spend every day at McDonald's and Burger King, right? Because mama ain't cooking no more, right? We just grab something quick to eat on the way home, and the children still hungry 2 hours later. Okay?
Mhm.
So we got to ask ourselves, we got to take a hard look at our spending habits. Are we putting ourselves in a position financially that we can save something and not just pass on debt? Uh, we got. I just believe, and this is just my belief. I don't force my belief on other people, but I believe in giving God His first. I believe if you help the Lord take care of His bills, He'll take care of yours. So the next thing you got to do, I believe in saving the next 10 to 15% after you have taken care of His. You got to pay yourself first, and then you live off the rest.
Mhm.
How is it? I know we're to push for time, but how is it that we pay everybody else but ourselves?
Hmm.
Uncle Sam get his money before we get it,
Say
right?
that again, brother.
And then when we get it, we don't work for it. We have worked all month for the check, but we don't put anything for ourselves behind. That's what I'm saying. So we'll never be able to have anything and build anything if we're always robbing Peter to pay Paul. And some months, how I used to live, we ain't pay nobody. We ain't pay Peter nor Paul, right? So, so if we're always behind the 8 ball trying to catch up, we can never amass any kind of wealth. But lastly, we got to have multiple streams of income. See, one income no longer will accumulate wealth. You got to be doing multiple things, right? Then you got to circulate some of that money back into your community. As my brother said, you got to be able to shop with somebody else. Because if
Mhm.
you continue to allow that money to go out of your community, then not only will you not have, but other business owners like yourself won't have.
Mhm.
I find it amazing. I'm through. I find it amazing how Big Mama and Mud Deer and Papa and all of them didn't have the education we have. They didn't have the income that we have, but they saved something. They
Hmm.
saved a quarter and a nickel. They put it under the bed tick. They put it in mason jars and buried it because they knew one day they were going to need it. They saved for a rainy day, right? And
Mhm.
somehow we have gotten away from that. They kill hogs and raise sweet potatoes, and they didn't just keep it all for themselves, brothers. They shared it with the community. They killed the hog. Everybody.
Mhm.
What that community that we used to have, and that's how we're going to start accumulating more wealth, not only just for ourselves, but for each other.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I just want to thank you. You the first reverend. You made history. The first reverend to say, "I'm about to wrap it up." Then you said one more thing, and then that was it. So
Hey.
you just made Black history, brother.
For real.
So let me say this. We're coming on to 10 minutes left, but I want you all hit on some themes that I think are worth repeating. And again, to our audience, please share this. Um, watch this as many times. Bring someone else and invite them and begin to have discussions around this. Because when we talk about being Black wealth is not about individual wealth. It's about the wealth of Black communities. Town Bayou was a community. It wasn't about just one rich person. It was about the richness of a community and thinking about it from being a collective. So when we think about, again, Representative Anthony said, why is it that we pay ourselves? Why is it that we don't pay ourselves? Part of it is we don't think we're worth paying.
Mm,
The reality of
mm.
it is when we look into the mirror and and again, as the brothers were saying earlier, that negative seems to stop. And because it stops, we don't invest in ourselves. And that investing in ourselves, meaning that we have to begin to put that 10% aside. We need to change the way we eat, to change the way we do things, begin to participate in those things that are positive and prosperous, not only for us, but for others. And part of it begins with where these brothers started this conversation about being confident and recognizing that we all make a contribution. It starts there. It starts there by recognizing we do matter. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, that means Black male lives matter. And they have to matter not only to someone else, they have to matter to us, to invest in us. And when we invest in us and our communities, everybody will win. So I want to thank the brothers for raising that. So in the remaining 10 minutes, and I think it was Brother Sykes and Brother Knight raised this. So again, I need you to keep your comments a little shorter this time because we're in the middle of a pandemic. All right, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we got to talk a little bit about a pandemic. We don't have much time. So tell me, why don't we talk more about Black men's health in Mississippi? I'm hearing about every other group, but I don't hear
Man.
about Black men. And I'll just say this because this is part of what I do. Is Black men have worse COVID outcomes than other groups of men. Why is it that we're not talking about this? So again, please keep your comments short. I don't want to run over time, and I want to give everybody a chance. So if you take a minute or two, why is it we don't talk about Black men's health in Mississippi?
Mm.
So I want to start with so let's start with we'll start with Reverend since he
All right.
did so well last time. So let's
Okay.
let's start with him. Then we'll hear from Mr. Knight, and then we'll hear from Mr. Sykes.
All right. Well, I guess very quickly from a physical perspective, I would say the Tuskegee study of untreated syphilis in the Negro male from 1932 to 1972, 40 years. This 40-year experiment, I think, stands as a moral complex failure. And what it did, it taught us to distrust medicine, taught us to distrust those who were to care for us. Okay, they were not giving treatments, and many of these men died. If y'all look it up, many of these men died. Right, they suffered and they died from untreated syphilis, and all of them were of African descent. And so that erosion of trust was a central theme of the distrust that we have in scientific and medical studies. But also from a mental and physical side, see, as young boys, we are taught not to cry. We are taught not to show hurt. We are taught not to get into our feelings and be a man, be a real man, because real men don't cry. And so over the years, we've suppressed those emotions and we deal with it internally, which I believe is one of the reasons we suffer heart disease and we suffer hypertension and high blood pressure, diabetes, common rate, because we internalize all of this mess and all of this pressure that we have on our lives, because real men don't cry. When our boys fall when they're 5 and 6 years old, get up, boy, get up. Don't show hurt. And we don't teach them to show emotions, and it causes us to not be able to share those emotions out of fear of being soft. And so we are afraid to share when we are hurting, when we have issues, when we have mental challenges, because we were taught. And I could get into it, but I'm not. I could preach a sermon on that, but I want us to understand, because we were taught that. Now we don't want to share something wrong with us.
Oh, okay. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Thank you for. So we got a couple minutes each. So Mr. Knight, you have a couple minutes, and Mr. Sykes, you have a couple of minutes, and then we'll wrap. Then we'll wrap this conversation up.
I kind of feel the same way that the Reverend was just saying. It's basically, I can speak on my era. I was born in '76, and men be afraid to find out what's wrong with them. They be like,
Mm,
well, if I've been living this long with it, it's all right. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think
mhm,
from the guys that I went to school with, the guys I used to hang with, the guys I grew up with. To be honest, my wife makes me go to the doctor. She
mm,
always have. If I might be living, what's wrong? And she be like, what's wrong? I say, nothing. Something got to be wrong. You been in bed 3 days and you don't be in the bed 3 hours, let alone 3 days. You know what I'm saying? So, like the Reverend was saying, it was passed on down from not trusting and also being afraid to know what's actually going on with you. But hey,
mm.
I'm not that way no more. I can have an itch on my neck and I'm gonna get off this phone with y'all and I'm gonna go straight to the doctor because I'm not a doctor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, so it's important to know that you're healthy and it's important to know what's wrong with you. I used to didn't know that. I used to didn't respect it. But now I
Mm,
respect that to the fullest because the last 5 to 10 years, I know a lot of guys that was 29, 32, 35 had heart attacks. And when I was young, old people had heart attacks. No disrespect, Reverend, or you, brother. You know what I'm saying? Calling y'all old people. Seasoned people. I put it like that. A seasoned person was usually the one to have heart attacks. But now you have having heart attacks at 25 years old and 30 years old. So, it's about being afraid as being a black man to know what's wrong with you. That's what I think. But I'm not one of those guys anymore. I used to be like that, so I know I can speak from experience of being that I don't know what's wrong with me, but I ain't going to no doctor. You know what I'm saying? I'm still kind of leery now. I'm gonna close, but I'm still kind of leery now of shots. I don't take a flu shot. I don't like them shooting nothing in me. Because I don't know if you can't spell it out to me, you can't Google it and let me see what this is you're shooting at me. You're not gonna shoot it in me because I don't trust America. I'm one of those persons. So hey, that's my take on that.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, Mr. Sykes, take a couple of minutes. You got a couple of minutes
Yeah.
left, and then
Yeah.
we'll wrap this up. But yeah, we need you to close us out. We need you to run across the tape now.
No problem. So the Reverend started with Tuskegee, right? So that's a story that's been handed down, and we see it, and it stigmatizes us in a way. And it's not just watching the story; it's what it implanted in the DNA of black men in the black community for all these generations. Like where we have this fear. Then also, I think about like Sanford and Son, where Red Fox, as Fred Sanford, would barely go to the doctor because he's like, everybody I know that goes to the doctor don't never come back out, right?
Yeah.
So you got that type of, and then even like moving further into like entertainment that's current, like Damon Wayans on the show My Wife and Kids, talking about like going to get a prostate exam and kind of like adding some humor to it that takes away a little of the stigma. But it's also like some brothers don't get prostate exams because what we've been told about being gay, and like
Hmm.
we'd rather be seen as a heterosexual macho man than to know like if it's something up in our body that's gonna take us out within the next 2 or 3 years. So when we see Chadwick Boseman, does that actually make us feel inclined to go and see what's wrong with us and take care of ourselves?
Mm,
And then it is what Brother John talking about. You got a good partner by your side, like the young lady that I'm dating. You gonna get some long walks. You're gonna get some vitamins. You're gonna get encouraged to drink some water, like all these things where you think you've been dragged or drugged through something, but unless you have some presence in your life other than yourself to inject it and hold you accountable, then it don't happen. So
For real.
yeah, it's a lot of stigmas around black and I mean, you got to look at this last thing. They ripping whole uteruses out of immigrant women, non-documented women at the border. And so we seeing this still happening. It's not like the medical field has lost its evil intent. We not on the table right now, so we don't know when we back up on the block.
Say that, brother.
well, gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. Um, and I know that the viewers of this will consider themselves educated and informed about many of the issues that affect Black men in Mississippi, and Black men in America. And I want to thank you, each of you, for your candid and complete and comprehensive answers to each one of the questions. As a matter of fact, I still had 2 more left, but we're out of time. But I want to thank each of you for sharing, in all seriousness, sharing this evening and allowing us to learn about each of you, your experiences, and also sharing different views from a population that's often unheard of. Ralph Ellison talked about the invisible man.
Yeah.
And again, oftentimes it's not that we render ourselves invisible, it's just that the environments in which we in render us invisible. So I want to thank you. I also
Mhm.
want to thank again One Voice,
Yes.
Mississippi NAACP,
Yes.
for putting this conversation together. Just as a couple of notes, I want to encourage each of you to note these announcements about what's coming up. One Voice MBLS Gathering of Leaders is scheduled to take place next Friday, October 30th. The Mississippi NAACP State Convention and Policy Institute is November 12th through the 14th. Again, we encourage you to like and follow One Voice in the Mississippi NAACP Facebook page to stay connected. Please join the conversation, woman to woman conversation, as well as conversation with our youth. Also, please, if you have not voted yet, please make a plan to vote on November 3rd. And again, thanks to all of our guests. Thanks to Reverend Representative Otis Anthony, Mr. John Knight, and Mr. Albert Sykes. Thank you for blessing us this evening. And to everyone in our audience, we bid you good night, be safe, and take good care. Thank you so very
Absolutely.
much.
Bless
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings, brothers.
Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you.